I was so excited to start my new job at the hospital. After years of hard work and sleepless nights studying, I had finally become a registered nurse. It felt like a dream come true. On my first day, I was a bundle of nerves, but everyone was so welcoming. The head nurse, Linda, took me under her wing and showed me the ropes. "You're going to do great, Sarah," she assured me with a warm smile. "I can already tell you have what it takes." Her words gave me a much-needed confidence boost. As I made my rounds, checking on patients and administering medications, I felt a sense of purpose. This was what I was meant to do. After my shift, I couldn't wait to get home and tell Tom all about it. Tom and I had been married for 7 years, and he was always my biggest cheerleader. As I pulled into our driveway, I saw him standing on the porch with a bouquet of flowers. "Congratulations on your first day, Nurse Sarah," he called out as I got out of the car. I ran up to him and threw my arms around his neck. "You're the best, you know that?" He kissed me softly. "I'm so proud of you, babe. I know how hard you've worked for this." We went inside and Tom had prepared my favorite meal, lasagna with garlic bread. As we ate, I gushed about every detail of my day. Tom listened intently, asking questions and hanging on my every word. "I'm exhausted but so happy," I said as I finished my story. "I really feel like I'm making a difference." Tom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You are, Sarah. You're amazing at everything you do." I beamed at him, feeling so grateful for his love and support. This was what I had always dreamed of: a fulfilling career and a wonderful marriage. I truly felt like I had it all. The next few months flew by as I settled into my new role at the hospital. I loved my job more and more each day. The long hours were tiring, but so rewarding. Tom was incredibly understanding about my crazy schedule. He'd often have dinner waiting when I got home late, or leave sweet notes in my lunch bag. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, I came home to find Tom had drawn me a bubble bath. He had candles lit and soft music playing. "You work so hard," he said, kissing my forehead. "You deserve to relax." As I sank into the warm, fragrant water, I felt overwhelmed with love for my thoughtful husband. How did I get so lucky? Our weekends were filled with lazy mornings in bed, afternoon walks in the park, and game nights with our friends. Tom and I were always laughing and playfully teasing each other. He still gave me butterflies, even after all these years. "Hey, beautiful," he'd say, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I cooked dinner. "Have I told you today how much I love you?" I'd turn in his arms and kiss him. "I love you more." Life wasn't perfect, of course. We had our occasional arguments and stressful moments, but at the end of the day, I always felt secure in our love and commitment to each other. Tom was my rock, my best friend, my soulmate. I couldn't imagine my life without him. As our 7th wedding anniversary approached, I started planning a surprise weekend getaway for us. I wanted to do something special to show Tom how much he meant to me. Little did I know, my perfectly happy world was about to be turned upside down. It was just another Tuesday morning when I first noticed something odd. Tom was getting ready for work, and I was still in bed, enjoying a rare day off. As he rushed around the bedroom, I caught a glimpse of him checking his phone, then quickly shoving it in his pocket when he saw me looking. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, sitting up. "Yeah, just a work email," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. I shrugged it off, figuring he was stressed about a deadline or something. But then, as he leaned in to kiss me goodbye, his phone buzzed again. He pulled away so fast, it was like he'd been shocked. "I gotta run," he said, practically bolting out the door. I tried to push the weird feeling aside, but it niggled at me all day. That evening, when Tom got home, I noticed he kept his phone face down on the coffee table. Every time it lit up with a notification, he'd snatch it up lightning fast. "Popular today, huh?" I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Oh, you know how it is. Work never stops," he laughed, but it sounded forced. Over the next few days, I started paying more attention. Tom was always on his phone, but now he angled the screen away from me when he texted. He'd take calls in the other room, speaking in hushed tones. Once, I walked in on him mid-conversation and he hung up abruptly. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Nobody important," he said, pocketing his phone. "Just a client." I wanted to believe him, but something felt off. We'd always been so open with each other. Why the sudden secrecy? One night, we were cuddling on the couch watching a movie when Tom's phone buzzed. He reached for it, but I playfully grabbed his arm. "Come on, can't work, wait, it's our movie night," I pouted. For a split second, I saw panic flash in his eyes. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're right, babe. Sorry." He turned his phone face down, but I noticed his leg jiggling nervously for the rest of the movie. The next morning, I woke up early and found Tom's phone on the nightstand. Without thinking, I reached for it, but it was locked with a new passcode. "Since when do you lock your phone?" I asked when he woke up. He looked startled. "Oh, new company policy, data protection and all that." I nodded, but my stomach churned. Tom and I had always known each other's passcodes. It was no big deal. Why change now? As the days went on, I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid. Tom was probably just stressed at work. Maybe he was planning a surprise for our anniversary, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter. One evening, I was folding laundry when I found a receipt in Tom's pocket. It was for an expensive restaurant we'd never been to. When I asked him about it, he stammered something about a business lunch. "Must have been some lunch," I said, eyeing the total. "Yeah, you know how these client meetings can be," he laughed nervously. I wanted to press further, but I bit my tongue. I didn't want to be the nagging, suspicious wife. Tom loved me. He'd never do anything to hurt me, right? But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Tom's steady breathing beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The man sleeping next to me suddenly felt like a stranger. His phone was clutched tightly in his hand, even in sleep. I closed my eyes, willing myself to stop overthinking, but the questions kept swirling in my mind. Why the secrecy? Why the nervous behavior? Why did it suddenly feel like there was a wall between us? I told myself I was being silly, that I should trust my husband, that there had to be a perfectly innocent explanation for everything. But deep down, a little voice whispered that where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And right now, our perfect life was starting to look pretty smoky. As the weeks went by, Tom's strange behavior became impossible to ignore. It felt like I was living with a different person. The loving, attentive husband I knew had been replaced by someone distant and secretive. One night, I decided to confront him. "Tom, is everything okay? You seem different lately." He barely looked up from his phone. "Everything's fine, Sarah. Just busy with work." I tried again. "You're always on your phone. We hardly talk anymore." This time, he put the phone down and sighed. "I'm sorry, babe. It's just a stressful time at the office. I'll try to be more present." But nothing changed. In fact, things got worse. Tom started coming home later and later, always with the same excuse. Big project at work. When he was home, he was distracted and irritable. One evening, I called his office to see if he wanted to grab dinner, only to be told he'd left hours ago. When he finally came home, I asked where he'd been. "Oh, I went for a drink with some colleagues," he stammered, not meeting my eyes. I felt sick to my stomach. Tom had never lied to me before. At least, I didn't think he had. The next day, I was doing laundry when I noticed a strange smell on Tom's shirt. It was floral, like perfume, but not my perfume. "Hey, Tom," I called out casually. Did you change your cologne?" He looked panicked for a second before composing himself. "No, why?" I held up the shirt. "This smells different." "Oh, must be the new fabric softener at the dry cleaners," he said quickly. But I knew for a fact he hadn't been to the dry cleaners in weeks. That night, I lay awake, my mind racing. Was I going crazy? Was I seeing problems where there weren't any? But then I remembered all the little things. The locked phone, the late nights, the mysterious calls, and now the perfume. I decided to talk to my best friend, Lisa. We met for coffee, and I spilled everything. "Sarah, honey," Lisa said gently. "I hate to say this, but it sounds like Tom might be, you know." I couldn't bring myself to say the word cheating. It hung in the air between us, unspoken but painfully present. "No," I shook my head vehemently. "Tom would never do that. He loves me." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I hope you're right, but Sarah, you need to trust your gut." As I drove home, Lisa's words echoed in my head. Trust your gut. And my gut was screaming that something was very, very wrong. That evening, Tom came home late again. He smelled of alcohol and cigarettes, even though he didn't smoke. "Where were you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Work. Like I said," he replied, avoiding my gaze. "You smell like a bar, Tom." He shrugged. "Had a few drinks with the guys. No big deal." I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand the truth. But instead, I just nodded and went to bed, leaving him on the couch. The next morning, I woke up early and found Tom's wallet on the dresser. Before I could stop myself, I opened it. There, behind his credit cards, was a hotel key card. My hands shook as I put it back. This couldn't be happening. Not to us, not to me, but I couldn't deny it anymore. The signs were all there. The late nights, the secretive behavior, the lies. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion. As I made coffee, trying to act normal, my mind was in turmoil. What should I do? Confront him? Hire a private investigator? Pretend I didn't know? Tom came into the kitchen, yawning. He kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just shattered my entire world. "Morning, babe. Sleep well?" I looked at him. This man I thought I knew better than anyone. This man I had loved and trusted for years. And for the first time, I saw a stranger. Yeah, I lied. My voice surprisingly steady. I slept great. As Tom left for work, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was going to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. Because living with this doubt, this gnawing suspicion, was slowly killing me. I needed to know, and God help Tom if my worst fears were true. I couldn't take it anymore. The suspicion was eating me alive. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. So, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. Investigate my own husband. It started small. One morning, after Tom left for work, I checked his dresser drawers. I felt terrible, like I was violating his privacy. But I couldn't stop myself. I found nothing unusual, just his clothes neatly folded as always. Then I moved to his closet. As I rifled through his jackets, something fell out of a pocket. It was a receipt for a fancy jewelry store downtown. My heart raced. Was he buying me a surprise gift? Or was it for someone else? I put it back exactly where I found it, hands shaking. Next, I checked our shared computer. Tom had always left it logged in, trusting me completely. I hesitated for a moment before opening the browser history. What I found made my stomach churn. There were searches for local hotels, dating advice websites, and even how to hide an affair. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "No," I whispered to myself. "There has to be an explanation." I closed the browser, feeling sick, but I couldn't stop now. I had to know everything. That afternoon, I called Tom's office. "Hi, this is Sarah, Tom's wife. Is he available?" The receptionist paused. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Johnson, but Tom left early today. He said he had a doctor's appointment." My blood ran cold. Tom hadn't mentioned any appointment to me. "Oh, right," I lied. "I forgot. Thanks anyway." I hung up, my mind racing. Where was he? Who was he with? I decided to drive by his office just to see if his car was there. As I pulled into the parking lot, my heart sank. His car was gone, on a whim. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. What should I do? Go in, wait. After what felt like hours, I saw Tom walk out. He wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, tall, blonde, gorgeous. They were laughing about something. Then, to my horror, Tom leaned in and kissed her cheek. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. Not my Tom. Not to me. They got into separate cars and drove off. I followed Tom at a distance, my vision blurry with unshed tears. He didn't go home. Instead, he pulled into a park we used to visit when we were first dating. I parked and watched as he got out of his car and sat on a bench, staring at his phone with a smile on his face. My Tom, my husband, looking happier than I'd seen him in months. And it wasn't because of me. I wanted to confront him right there, to scream and cry and demand answers. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just sat there, watching him, feeling my world crumble around me. After about an hour, Tom got back in his car and headed home. I followed at a distance, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak, confusion. They all swirled together until I felt numb. I waited a few minutes after Tom went inside before I followed. I took a deep breath, plastered on a fake smile, and walked in. "Hey, honey, how was work?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Tom looked up, startled. "Oh, fine. Just a normal day." I nodded, fighting back tears. "That's good. I'm going to take a shower." As the hot water washed over me, I finally let the tears fall. How could he do this to me? To us? What had I done wrong? But as I dried off, a new emotion took over, determination. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let him make a fool of me. I looked at myself in the mirror, my eyes red but fierce. "You're going to get through this, Sarah," I told my reflection, and you're going to find out everything. This was just the beginning. I had opened Pandora's box, and now there was no going back. I was going to uncover every lie, every secret, no matter what it took, because the truth, no matter how painful, had to be better than living in this web of lies and suspicion. And when I had all the evidence, when I knew everything, then I would decide what to do next. One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. After my initial discoveries, I was on high alert. Every little thing Tom did seemed suspicious. I felt like I was going crazy, analyzing his every move, every word, but I needed concrete proof before I could confront him. One morning, as Tom was in the shower, I heard his phone buzz. Without thinking, I grabbed it. "Who's Mike?" Tom's face went pale for a second before he composed himself. "Oh, just a new guy at work. We're grabbing lunch today." I nodded, pretending to believe him, but inside, I was seething. Later that week, I decided to follow Tom after work again. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but I couldn't help it. I trailed him to a gym. He went inside with a gym bag. I waited for hours, feeling foolish. When he came out, he was sweaty and tired looking. I drove home, feeling a mix of relief and embarrassment. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Maybe there was an innocent explanation for everything. The next day, I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in Tom's pocket for 2 movie tickets from last Tuesday, a night he told me he was working late. My hands shook as I held the paper. This had to mean something, right? But when I confronted him about it, he had an explanation ready. "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. I took a client to see that new action movie. It was his idea. Said he couldn't focus on business talk in the office." It sounded plausible. I wanted to believe him so badly. A few days later, I was grocery shopping when I bumped into Linda, a nurse I work with. She looked surprised to see me. "Sarah, I thought you were on that romantic getaway Tom planned. Did something come up?" I froze. What romantic getaway?" Linda's eyes widened. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought..." "Tom came by the hospital last week to ask about getting you time off. He said he was planning a surprise trip for your anniversary. I assumed you knew by now." I forced a smile. "Oh, right. That, yes. We had to postpone it. Work stuff, you know." As soon as Linda was out of sight, I leaned against my shopping cart, trying to steady my breathing. A surprise trip. Was this the explanation for all the secrecy? Had I been wrong about everything? When I got home, I searched the house for any evidence of trip planning. I found nothing. I even checked our bank statements, but there were no unusual purchases or bookings. I felt like I was going insane. One minute I was sure Tom was cheating. The next I was convincing myself I was being paranoid. That night, as we ate dinner, I decided to test the waters. "So, I ran into Linda today," I said casually. Tom nearly choked on his food. "Oh, yeah. She mentioned something about you planning a surprise?" For a moment, hope flared in my chest. Maybe he'd confess to the trip, prove all my suspicions wrong, but Tom just laughed nervously. "Oh, it was supposed to be a surprise. I was thinking of taking you away for the weekend, but work's been so busy I haven't had time to plan anything." My heart sank. Another lie. There was no trip. Never had been. As the days went on, I found myself on an emotional roller coaster. One day, Tom would be sweet and attentive, making me doubt all my suspicions. The next, he'd be distant and secretive, reigniting all my fears. I knew I should confront him directly, demand the truth, but a part of me was terrified of what I might learn. As long as I didn't know for sure, I could cling to the hope that I was wrong. One night, as Tom slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, tears silently rolling down my cheeks. How had we gotten here? How had my perfect marriage turned into this web of lies and suspicion? I turned to look at Tom, peacefully sleeping. In that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. The constant doubt was eating me alive. I needed to know the truth, one way or another. No more half measures, no more timid investigations. It was time to dig deeper, to find real, undeniable proof. Because living in this limbo of suspicion and false alarms was slowly killing me. Tomorrow, I decided I would take my investigation to the next level. And God help Tom if my worst fears were true. I woke up the next morning with a new sense of determination. No more playing detective in the shadows. It was time to get serious about uncovering the truth. My first step, I called in sick to work. I needed a full day to implement my plan. As soon as Tom left for the office, I sprang into action. I started by thoroughly searching our home. I looked in every drawer, every closet, under every piece of furniture. I wasn't sure what I was looking for exactly, but I figured I'd know it when I saw it. After hours of searching, I found something tucked away in the back of Tom's sock drawer, a burner phone. My hands shook as I turned it on. It was password protected, of course. "Damn it, Tom," I muttered, trying various combinations. Our anniversary date? Nope. His birthday? No luck. Then, on a hunch, I tried the blonde woman's birthday, the date I'd seen on that jewelry store receipt weeks ago. Bingo. The phone unlocked, revealing a series of text messages. My heart pounded as I scrolled through them. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. Last night was amazing. When can we do it again? I miss you already." I felt sick to my stomach. This was it, undeniable proof. But I needed more. I needed to know everything. I grabbed my laptop and logged into our shared cloud storage. Tom had always been careless about logging out. I found a folder labeled work stuff that I'd never noticed before. Inside were dozens of photos, Tom with the blonde woman, looking happy and in love. There were even a few of them kissing. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the images. How could he do this to me? To us? But I wasn't done. I remembered something my tech-savvy friend had mentioned once about tracking apps. With shaking hands, I downloaded one and installed it on Tom's phone. It felt wrong, invasive, but I was past caring about right and wrong. I needed to know everything. As I set up the app, a notification popped up on Tom's phone. A message from Mike, who I now knew was actually the blonde woman. "Can't wait for our weekend getaway. I've booked the cabin." A weekend getaway? My blood boiled. I checked our bank statements again and found a large withdrawal from last week. He was using our money to fund his affair. I was about to put the phone down when another idea struck me. I opened the Maps app and checked his location history. There it was. Frequent visits to an address I didn't recognize. I Google searched it. An apartment complex across town. My mind raced. Was this where he met her? Did she live there? I had to know. I grabbed my keys and drove to the address. As I sat in my car, staring at the building, I felt a mix of determination and dread. What would I find if I went inside? Just then, my phone buzzed. It was the tracking app I'd installed on Tom's phone. He was on the move, heading here, to this very apartment complex. My heart pounded as I sank lower in my seat. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This was it, the moment of truth. I had all the evidence I needed, but seeing it with my own eyes, it made it real in a way nothing else had. Tom walked into the building, a spring in his step that I hadn't seen in months. He looked happy, excited, everything he hadn't been with me lately. I sat there, tears streaming down my face. As the full weight of the situation hit me, my marriage was over. The life I thought I had was a lie. And the man I loved more than anything in the world was upstairs right now, in the arms of another woman. But as the initial shock and pain began to subside, a new emotion took its place. Anger. White hot, all-consuming anger. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. Tom's car in the lot, the building, everything. Then I pulled out a notebook and started writing down every detail I could remember from the past few weeks. Every lie, every suspicious moment. Because now I had a new mission. It wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about making sure Tom paid for what he'd done. As I drove home, my mind was already formulating a plan. Tom thought he could have his cake and eat it too. Well, he was about to learn a very painful lesson. The old Sarah might have been content to cry and wallow in self-pity. But this new Sarah, she was out for justice. And heaven help anyone who got in her way. The next few days were a blur of activity. I threw myself into gathering more evidence, driven by a mix of anger and determination. I wasn't just collecting proof anymore, I was building a case. And you really thought I wouldn't notice? Next, I dug deeper into the burner phone I'd found. There were more messages, each one like a knife to my heart. I love you so much, babe. But the real goldmine came from the tracking app I'd installed. It showed Tom's movements for the past week, and the pattern was clear. Every time he said he was working late, he was at that apartment complex. And on days he claimed to have client meetings, he was at hotels or restaurants across town. I decided to take it a step further. I borrowed a friend's car and followed Tom myself. I watched as he met the blonde woman for lunch, their hands intertwined across the table. I saw them shopping together, laughing and acting like a couple in love. Each time, I took photos, clear, undeniable proof of his infidelity. It hurt like hell, but I forced myself to document everything. One evening, I even gathered the courage to go to the apartment complex when I knew Tom would be there. I waited in the lobby, pretending to be visiting a friend, and saw them come down together. They were dressed up, clearly heading out for a night on the town. Tom's arm was around her waist, and he looked at her the way he used to look at me. I ducked behind a plant, my heart pounding as they walked past. Tom was wearing the watch I'd given him for our last anniversary. The sight of it made me want to scream. As soon as they left, I approached the front desk. "Excuse me," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm looking for my friend, blonde woman. Often visits a man named Tom. I was supposed to meet her, but I forgot which apartment." The receptionist smiled. "Oh, you mean Melissa. Apartment 507. She's not in right now, though." Melissa. So that was her name. I thanked the receptionist and left, feeling sick to my stomach but victorious. Another piece of the puzzle. Back at home, I compiled everything I'd gathered. Bank statements, photos, screenshots of messages, a detailed log of Tom's movements. I even had recordings of his phone calls with Melissa, calls where he told her he loved her, where they planned their future together. As I stared at the mountain of evidence, a small part of me still couldn't believe it. How could the man I loved, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, do this to me? But the proof was undeniable. Tom, my Tom, was living a double life, and he'd been doing it right under my nose for months. That night, as Tom slept peacefully beside me, probably dreaming of her, I lay awake, my mind racing. I had all the evidence I needed now, more than enough to confront him, to end this charade once and for all. But something held me back, a voice in my head that whispered, "Not yet. Make him suffer like you've suffered." I turned to look at Tom's sleeping face. Once, that face had meant safety, love, home. Now, all I saw was a liar, a cheater, a stranger. "Oh, Tom," I whispered, a tear rolling down my cheek. "You have no idea what's coming." Because now that I had all the pieces, it was time to put my plan into action. Tom thought he was so clever, juggling two lives. But he was about to learn a harsh lesson. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I was done being the victim in this story. It was time for the tables to turn. As I finally drifted off to sleep, a small, bitter smile played on my lips. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to gather more evidence, to strengthen my case. And when the time came to confront Tom, I'd be ready, more than ready. I'd make sure he regretted every lie, every betrayal, every moment of happiness he'd stolen from me. The stage was set. All that was left was the final act. And oh, what a show it would be. Today was the day. I'd gathered all the evidence, planned every detail. It was time to confront Tom and end this charade once and for all. I woke up early, my stomach in knots. Tom was still sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. I got dressed and made coffee, trying to calm my nerves. When Tom finally stumbled into the kitchen, I plastered on a fake smile. "Morning, honey, sleep well?" He yawned and nodded. "Yeah, like a rock. You're up early." "Oh, I just couldn't sleep," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Hey, can we talk when you get home from work? There's something important I need to discuss." Tom looked puzzled but agreed. "Sure, everything okay?" "We'll talk later," I said, turning away to hide the tears threatening to spill. As soon as Tom left, I sprang into action. I laid out all the evidence on the dining room table, the bank statements, the photos, the phone records, everything. Then I waited. Each minute felt like an eternity. My hands shook as I poured myself another cup of coffee. Finally, I heard Tom's key in the lock. This was it. No turning back now. "Sarah," Tom called out. "I'm home. What did you want to talk about?" I took a deep breath and stepped into the living room. "Hi, Tom. Why don't you come sit down? We have a lot to discuss." Tom's face fell as he saw my expression. "What's going on? You're scaring me." I led him to the dining room. As soon as he saw the table covered in papers and photos, all the color drained from his face. What is all this?" he stammered. "Why don't you tell me, Tom?" I said, my voice ice cold. "Or should I ask Melissa?" Tom's eyes widened in shock. I don't know what you're talking about," I laughed bitterly. "Really? That's how you want to play this? Okay, let me refresh your memory." I picked up a stack of photos and started laying them out one by one. "Here's you and Melissa at that fancy restaurant downtown. Oh, and here you are shopping together. My personal favorite, this one of you kissing her outside her apartment building." Tom sat heavily in a chair, his head in his hands. "Sarah, I can explain." "Explain what, Tom?" I shouted, finally losing my cool. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months? How you've been sneaking around behind my back, spending our money on your mistress." I threw the bank statements at him. "Or maybe you'd like to explain these, all those late nights at the office that were actually hotel stays and expensive dinners." Tom looked up, tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I never meant for this to happen. It just happened. It just happened," I repeated incredulously. "What? You tripped and fell into her bed? Don't insult my intelligence, Tom." I picked up his phone and waved it in his face. "Want to know how I know everything? I put a tracking app on your phone. I saw every place you went, every lie you told." Tom's face crumpled. You invaded my privacy. Your privacy? I laughed hysterically. You cheated on me, Tom. You betrayed our marriage. You don't get to talk about privacy. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I know everything, Tom. The weekend getaways, the plans to leave me, the I love yous. It's all here. Tom stood up, reaching for me. Sarah, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Melissa, I swear. I love you. I stepped back out of his reach. No, Tom, it's too late for that. You had your chance to come clean, to be honest with me. Instead, you chose to lie over and over again. I picked up a folder and handed it to him. Here's everything I've gathered. I'm taking it to a divorce lawyer tomorrow. I suggest you start looking for one too. Tom's face crumpled. A divorce? Sarah, no. Please, we can fix this. I'll do anything. I shook my head, tears finally spilling over. There's nothing to fix. Tom, you broke us. You broke my trust, my heart, everything. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the table. I want you out of this house by tomorrow. I don't care where you go. Stay with Melissa for all I care, but I can't bear to look at you anymore. Tom fell to his knees, sobbing. Sarah, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. For a moment, I almost wavered, but then I remembered all the lies, all the betrayal. I steeled myself. It's already done, Tom. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving Tom crying on the floor. As I closed the bedroom door behind me, I finally let out the sob I'd been holding in. It was over. My marriage, my life as I knew it, everything. But as I cried into my pillow, I felt something else too. Relief. The truth was finally out. And tomorrow I'd start rebuilding my life. Without Tom, without lies, just me, picking up the pieces and moving forward. Because that's what strong women do. They survive, they thrive, and I was determined to do both. After the confrontation with Tom, of pretending everything was okay when my life was falling apart, I spent most of my time in bed, alternating between crying and staring blankly at the wall. My best friend, Lisa, came over every day, trying to coax me to eat or shower. Sarah, honey, you need to take care of yourself, she'd say, her voice full of concern. But I couldn't bring myself to care. What was the point? The man I loved, the life I thought I had, it was all a lie. One particularly bad day, I found myself looking at old photos of Tom and me. We looked so happy, so in love. Had it all been fake? Had he ever really loved me? Why wasn't I enough? I whispered to the empty room, tears streaming down my face. I started questioning everything. Maybe if I had been a better wife, he wouldn't have strayed. Maybe if I wasn't so focused on my career, he wouldn't have felt neglected. The what ifs and a maybes swirled in my head until I felt like I was going crazy. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Tom with Melissa. Were they together now? Was he happier with her? The thoughts tormented me. One night, in a moment of weakness, I called Tom's phone. It went straight to voicemail. I left a rambling, tearful message begging him to come back, to give us another chance. The next morning, I was horrified at my own desperation. I started avoiding my friends and calls. I couldn't bear their pity, their well-meaning advice. You're better off without him, they'd say. But I didn't feel better off. I felt lost, alone, broken. Days blurred into weeks. I lost weight, my clothes hanging off my frame. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten a proper meal or had a full night's sleep. One day, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at me. Dark circles under my eyes, hair limp and unwashed, cheeks hollow. What happened to you? I whispered to my reflection. I started doubting my own memories. Had our marriage really been as happy as I remembered? Or had I been blind to the problems all along? Maybe Tom was right to leave me. Maybe I wasn't worth loving. The divorce proceedings felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Sitting across from Tom in our lawyer's office, listening to them discuss the division of our assets like we were dividing up groceries. It all felt so cold, so final. Tom tried to talk to me a few times, to apologize, to explain, but I couldn't bear to hear it. Each word from him was like a knife twisting in my heart. "I never meant to hurt you, Sarah," he said one day after a meeting with the lawyers. I laughed bitterly. "Well, congratulations, Tom." I started seeing a therapist, more out of desperation than any real belief it would help. Dr. Thompson listened patiently as I poured out my heart, my fears, my insecurities. "Sarah," she said gently in one session, "have you considered that Tom's actions reflect on him, not on you?" I shook my head. "But there must have been something wrong with me, something lacking." Dr. Thompson leaned forward. "You're not responsible for Tom's choices. His infidelity is about his character, not your worth." I wanted to believe her. Maybe I could find myself again. But as I drove home to my empty apartment, the doubts crept back in. Could I really start over? Did I even know who I was without Tom? I crawled into bed, pulling the covers over my head. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I'll try to be stronger. Tomorrow, I'll try to move on. But as I drifted off to sleep, tears still wet on my cheeks, I wasn't sure if I believed it. The road ahead seemed so long, so daunting, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to walk it. I woke up one morning and something felt different. The crushing weight on my chest seemed a little lighter. I actually felt like getting out of bed. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I dragged myself to the shower, letting the hot water wash over me. As I stood there, I made a decision. Today was the day I'd start taking my life back. First things first, I called work. "Hi, Linda, it's Sarah. I'm ready to come back." Linda's voice was warm. "We've missed you, Sarah. Are you sure you're ready?" I took a deep breath. "I think I need this. I need normal." That afternoon, I walked into the hospital for the first time in weeks. My colleagues greeted me with hugs and supportive smiles. No one mentioned Tom or asked about the divorce. I was grateful for their discretion. As I put on my scrubs, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. Here, I wasn't Tom's ex-wife or the woman who got cheated on. I was Nurse Sarah, and people needed me. My first patient was an elderly man recovering from hip surgery. As I checked his vitals, he gripped my hand. "You have kind eyes, dear," he said. "You must be a wonderful nurse." I felt tears prick my eyes, but for once they weren't tears of sadness. "Thank you," I whispered. That night, instead of crawling straight into bed, I called Lisa. "Want to grab dinner?" I asked. I could hear the surprise and joy in her voice. "Absolutely. I'll pick you up in 30. Over pizza, I finally opened up to Lisa about everything. The pain, the doubt, the sleepless nights. She listened, offering tissues and understanding nods. "Sarah," she said finally, "you're the strongest person I know. You're going to get through this, and you're going to come out even stronger." For the first time in weeks, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. "Thanks, Lisa. I think I'm starting to believe that." The next day, I made an appointment with a lawyer. It was time to finalize the divorce and move on. As I sat in the office, discussing assets and agreements, I felt a strange sense of calm. This was the right thing to do. After the meeting, I drove to our old house. Tom had moved out weeks ago, but I hadn't been able to face going back. As I walked through the empty rooms, memories flooded back, both good and bad. But this time, they didn't overwhelm me. I ran my hand along the wall, remembering the day we painted it together, laughing and covered in splatters. "Goodbye, old life," I whispered. That weekend, I threw myself into redecorating my new apartment. I painted the walls a bright, cheerful yellow, a color Tom had always hated. Each brush stroke felt like an act of reclaiming my identity. Lisa and some other friends came over to help. We laughed, drank wine, and talked about the future. For the first time in months, I felt light, almost happy. As weeks turned into months, I found myself smiling more, laughing easier. I started taking yoga classes, joined a book club, even went on a few casual dates. None of them turned into anything serious, but each one helped me remember that I was desirable, interesting, worthy of love. One day I ran into Tom at the grocery store. My heart skipped a beat, but not in the way it used to. He looked diminished somehow, tired, older. "Sarah," he said, his voice full of regret. "You look great. I'm so sorry for..." I held up a hand, cutting him off. "It's okay, Tom. I'm okay. I hope you find happiness." As I walked away, I realized I meant it. The anger, the bitterness, it was gone. In its place was a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. You survived. You thrived. As I crawled into bed that night, I felt a sense of excitement I hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see what it would bring. I thought about how far I'd come, from the depths of despair to this moment of hope and renewal. It hadn't been easy, and there were still tough days ahead. But I knew now that I could handle whatever life threw at me. Because I was Sarah, strong, resilient, and finally, truly happy. Not because of anyone else, but because of me. And that was the greatest victory of all.